Day 22 started by taking a beef jerky and a soda from the fridge. I drank the soda immediately to fix my hunger issue. After that, I drove till the second crossroad, where near the one-story house, I noticed some enemies to deal with. To avoid having troubles when I will drive back home, I defeated all 4 before getting back in my truck. Then I followed the road until it started to turn to the right. Here I found a Z blocking my way forward I dealt with promptly. Later, looking across the road, I found the second one that was slowly walking toward my direction. He had a watch for me to loot. Then I zoomed out, only to notice that there was a larger group spread out in front of me. Killing the first rewarded me with another watch, but in exchange it broke my weapon, that I proceeded in replacing with the other jawbone war axe I brought with me. Time to equip it and I found myself surrounded. I quickly dealt with the first enemy incoming from the south, then turning around I dropped another 2 and obtained a steak knife from one of them. Later I addressed the new one that just emerged from the east. Time to do so and I had to kill also the next one to the north. After that, to avoid being overwhelmed, I retreated a little. This allowed me to isolate the fastest one, and once his brain was painting the snow, I proceeded in obtaining his belt. The next 3 came to me at a perfect frequency that allowed me to deal with them swiftly. This even resulted in leveling up my proficiency with the axe. Seconds after I was chased by a slow Z. After retreating a little, I defeated him and extracted a screwdriver from his back. The following zombie was stubborn, but this didn't pose a threat to me, considering none of his friends came to help him. Same happened to the next one. My rampage scared the rest, but my bloodlust wasn't over. For this reason, I approached the closest one to force his reaction. The fight with him was tough, and he fell down only when it was time to deal with his teammate. This didn't stop me from pushing him down and finishing both. After collecting a watch from one of them, I finally gave some love to the last one that was inspecting my truck. To my surprise, this one had a large knife in perfect condition to share. At this point, the surroundings was clear enough to allow me to move till the mailbox on the right side of the road. The noise of my vehicle attracted some unwanted attention. For this reason, I exited it and moved to the solitary enemy to the southwest. Despite he was stubborn, this didn't stop me from breaking his head in time, before shifting my focus to the rest of the crowd. That was composed by just 2 Zs chasing me, while on the other side of the road I found the third. The house to the east seems to be clear, but I heard more incoming from the west. They were more interested in my truck, and after a few seconds, finally they decided to claim it, by eating its owner. To make it easier fight them, I waited for them behind the fence. Despite I messed up my timing, I was still able to kill the first 2 before my axe was in pieces. I used the last piece to deal with the third and was surprised by the fourth that was able to knock me down. After getting up and pushing away the offender, I ran to the other side of the fence, where I had to deal with the fast approaching from that direction. Immediately after, I turned around in time to prevent the Z that followed me, to get back on his feet, and with the second stomp I finished him. After that, I did the same to the next 3 that was brave enough to climb over the fence. Finally, I got some time to find the hat on the ground that I lost while falling seconds ago. I didn't have the time to wear it back that I had to shift my focus to a newcomer that decided to climb over the fence. Using my long knife, I finished him in 2 hits, only to repeat the same on the next 2 that followed his friend to their graves. Later, I had to alternate the sides of the fence I was standing on in order to easily deal with the next 2, only to see a few seconds later 2 extra joining the graveyard. Finally, I got some free time to loot the corpses. This allowed me to find some fingerless gloves and a new crash helmet in perfect conditions. Time to take them that I had to deal with the late joiner of this party. At this point, my surroundings was clear, allowing me to start looting the nearby house. In the first box I found 5 books, 3 of which were precious skill books. In the next 2 containers I found more literature I could use to lift my mood. After that, I proceeded in picking up the television to be dismantled later. I found another electronic device in the bed drawer to loot. While in the nearby box, I even found a VHS that teaches woodcraft. Moving to the kitchen, the first thing I found was a meat cleaver. That is a better weapon compared to my long knife. While the rest of this house containers had nothing of use, so I marked this building as looted. At this point was time to go back to the car and deposit all of the loot I found so far in its trunk. In the process, I also equipped the rolling pin on my back to be used as a spare weapon. Moving a little bit further, I checked the trash can and mailbox, only to find some useless junk. Doing so caught the attention of two fast approaching Zeds. To avoid aggro more and deal with them safely, I jumped over the metal fence. This allowed me to finish them easy using my rolling pin. I even got a digital watch as reward for my effort. The noise I made alerted the closest Zed that climbed toward the corner of the fence, and I used that opportunity to finish him. Taking a few steps forward along the road, ended up aggro a new victim to the fence slaughter. Looking around felt somewhat clear, and the house to the northeast seems promising to become the new base of operations. But before that, I had to walk along the fence and deal with a solitary Zed in the middle of the road. Later I went closer to the shed, only to find a larger group guarding it. Getting a little bit closer, aggroed two enemies to my location. For this reason I strafed backwards until the fence, and to conserve energy I jumped over. This allowed me to kill two runners that came after me. The fight forced the rest of the horde to come for my head. I was able to defeat one before I had to retreat. Seconds after, I went on the other side of the fence and killed the second that followed me. The next moment, I pushed the chaser and dodged the crawler by going to the other side of the fence. After that, I pushed down the first, and while hitting him with my rolling pin, I dodged again the crawler, only to push him back down using my weapon. Once the third was on the ground, I kept hitting them until all three were dead. From this fight, I obtained only a belt as reward. Moments after, a slow one climbed over the fence, only to be added to the corpse's pile. Time to loot a belt and a watch from this one, and another one climbed over to meet the same fate. At this point was time to clear also the right side of the house, where I noticed another group that just emerged from the forest behind. I tried to intercept the first, but one hit wasn't enough to finish him before the second was on me. After retreating past the fence, I easily disposed of three that followed me. Seconds after, I pulled the one incoming from the northwest and guided him to the other side of the fence, where I proceeded in breaking his and his friend's skulls. The third tried to outflank me, but I jumped to the other side. This action helped a lot in dealing with the next three that came from different directions. After looting the new corpses for some watches and belts, I zoomed out, only to find a decent group in front of the main entrance to the house. One by one I started pulling them toward the fence, and the first three was easy to deal with. But soon after, two climbed at the same time and was able to push me away. After regaining balance, I dropped them both to the ground and finished one, but soon found myself surrounded. I tried to deal with them, but I was just wasting my energy, and soon after I felt out of breath. I was done playing games with them, so I retreated to the fence junction and forced them to climb over. Despite some mistakes and a little bit of struggle, I was able to deal with all four of them, only to be reached by a bonus one that was actually easy to kill. Before pushing further, I decided that was a good moment to go to the house looted before and use a chair to recover my strength. 1 hour later, I went back to the other house and killed a zombie that was left in front of the main entrance. Then moved to the shed where I had to deal with two extra before I had time to loot a belt from them. Seconds after, I was reached by the third that, beside being easy to kill, he even had a magazine that teaches some spices growing seasons. Time to take it, and I had to run toward the next fence in order to intercept a Zed that just climbed through. The noise of this kill forced two from the other side to commit suicide by climbing over it. Plus a bonus one came from along my side that also died easily after I pushed him to the ground. After looting his watch, I noticed more incoming from the north. One by one was dropping like flies, and I was able to kill 5 before I had to retreat to the next fence. On this one, I was able to defeat 7 more, because they came with a good distance between each others. This fight made me out of breath, and while looting I had to face a bonus one that came from my side. Dealing with the last one made me exhausted and even tired. Despite that the house I was fighting for to convert into my new base was probably fully cleared by this point, I didn't want to risk it. For this reason, I decided to go back to my truck and drive back to my old base. Considering that I decided to move to that house once back home, I started to move all of my loot to the trunk of my car. While transferring the food, I was ambushed by a Zed. Despite in bad shape, I was able to deal with him quickly. But I had no time to finish transferring my loot that two more pushed along my vehicle. I was in no shape to fight them outside, so I went to my roof in order to use its window to safely deal with both of them. It took an absurd amount of stomps to kill them. Plus, by the time I was done, I was extremely exhausted and tired. It was too risky to keep transferring more loot. Therefore, I closed the door and went to sleep. I will think about moving tomorrow.